When they came to the place called the Skull, they crucified him, along with the criminals, one on his right, the other on his left. The centurion, seeing what had happened, praised God and said, "Surely this was a righteous man." When they came to the place called the Skull, they crucified him along with the criminals, one on his right, the other on his left. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And they divided up his clothes by casting lots. One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. "Aren't you the Christ? Save yourself and us." But the other criminal rebuked him. "Don't you fear God," he said, "since you are under the same sentence? We are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Jesus answered him, "I tell you the truth. Today you will be with me in paradise." Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother's sister, Mary the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, "Dear woman, here is your son," and to the disciple, "Here is your mother." From that time on, this disciple took her into his home.
Hello everybody and welcome to this Charles Street in Brief. Some weeks ago Nigel asked me if I'd be prepared to do a Charles Street in Brief during Lent week on the theme of journeys. Now, I don't know about you, but I love going on journeys. I love going on the train, I love flying, and I particularly love walking. And as often as I can these days, I go to the Lake District and I do some walking. And I was brought up near the Lake District, and quite often as a youngster my parents would take me to the hills of the Lake District and we would walk, and that's where my love of walking comes from. So I thought today that I'd take you on one of my favourite walks. We're going to have to do it virtually, so no need to pack some sandwiches or a flask or anything, but I just want to take you from the small hamlet of Torver to the top of Coniston Old Man. And if you know the Lake District, you'll know that the Coniston Range really dominates that northern section of the Lake District, and Coniston itself is very popular. And indeed, walking up to Coniston Old Man from Coniston Village is very popular, but I like to go from the small village of Torver. So, are you ready? I'd like to be able to tell you that the chap on the left is me, but that would not be true. So here we are at Torver. Then my next slide takes us to the first little scattering of houses that you get on the walk from Torver. So we've set out and we've come to a little place called Scar Head, which is really nothing more than 2 or 3 houses and a couple of farms. The next slide is making good progress in that we've walked up from Scar's Head and we can just see Coniston Old Man poking up in the distance, and it looks magnificent, doesn't it, framed between those 2 trees. And the path at this point is very plain, and you won't get lost, which is great. My next slide takes us even nearer still. and this is the first site on the left of Dow Crag, and Dow Crag is very popular with climbers, and often you will see people hanging perilously from ropes as they ascend Dow Crag. You'll also notice in the foreground a great big slag heap, and the whole of the Coniston Range was mined very heavily in times past for lead and for tin, and particularly for copper. So we'll be having a peer down into that quarry in a minute, but as you can see, it's a lovely day, and there are other people on the path as well, and the wind is kind of rustling through the green sward, and all is well with the world, and it looks a lovely sight, doesn't it? And if you look carefully, you can spot some cows and some sheep. And my next slide takes us to the very edge of the quarry. I think it's called Bannister Head Quarry, and the photograph there doesn't really show it, but actually we really are quite a height up, and we're looking down into this quarry, and I have actually seen youngsters swimming in here. It must be absolutely perishing, and I don't quite know how you get down to it either. I mean, it's a fair old climb down to it. I seem to remember as a youngster I climbed down to the pool at the bottom of the quarry, but as you can see, it's really quite significant mining, and that water is really quite deep, as well as being absolutely perishing. So we probably better move on quite swiftly. Now we have done extremely well here, folks, in that we have galloped up, and we are now not that far from Coniston Old Man, and we're looking back on the path that we have taken past somewhere called Goat's Water. Now if you look a little bit further back, that is Dow Crag, and the hill on the right is I think it's Goat's Hawes. Now I've yet to see a goat in either Goat's Water or Goat's Hawes, but that is the derivation of the name of the hill round here. So what its connection with goats is in times past, I couldn't really tell you. But having got this far, I think we can have a sit down, quite frankly, in that we have come up a significant elevation, and we are probably a good 5 or 6 miles from where we started. The next slide tells us that we are very nearly there, and the photograph on the left hand side, you can actually see the path that we have come. So we've made terrific progress, and right down in the valley is Coniston Water. The photograph on the right hand side is another one of Goat's Fell, Goat's Hawes, and if we'd been feeling energetic, we could have pulled that one in as well and come down the path that you can clearly see there. But take heart, folks, we are very nearly there. And the next slide tells you that you've made it to the top. So very well done. And there's the trig point at the top of Coniston Old Man, and looking the other way, there's another lake down there which you pass if you come up the tourist route. And if you look carefully on that photograph, at the kind of bottom you can still see the copper workings, the copper mines down there, and that is also actually the site of Coniston Copper Mines Youth Hostel down there. So I don't know whether anybody's ever stayed there in times past, but that is down there. Now the view from the top, well, we've had some terrific photographs so far, but I have to say the one on the left is one that I took myself, in that I've been on the top of the Coniston Range on many an occasion, and I am here to tell you that often it looks like the photograph on the left hand side. Sometimes you can't see your hand in front of your face. if you do get a clear view, it is absolutely terrific. You can see as far as the hills in Scotland at Galloway. You can see Blackpool Tower, you can see Morecambe, and you can see the fells of the Lake District kind of laid out in front of you. But often it is like the photograph on the left hand side, and you can't see your hand in front of your face. So that's us, folks. We're at the top, but let me just lead you to my next slide, which kind of brings us to the theme of Lent. And it's been a very difficult year, hasn't it, in that the lockdown started, roughly speaking, in March in Lent last year, and we've had a very confusing and difficult journey. And that leads me to think about the disciples on the journey that they went through, on the journey to the cross, as portrayed for us and written about in the Gospels. And, you know, I feel for this group of men. If you think about the highs and the lows that they have had with their journey with Jesus over the years, and then it comes to this. And what were they thinking? Well, I've put some ideas on the right-hand side: confused and frightened and lost and betrayed and leaderless. They must have felt all of those things. And as I was thinking about my trip, I was also thinking about the disciples and some words from John chapter 17. This is the magnificent prayer of Jesus when he prays for his disciples, and this is just, well, virtually the last shakings of that prayer. And he says, looking at the disciples in John 17, "My prayer is not that you take them out of the world, but that you protect them from the evil one." And that's so important, isn't it? As disciples of Christ, we are never taken out of the world, but we live within it as real people. And it's okay sometimes to be confused and frightened and lost and betrayed and all the rest of it. We feel the same emotions of the disciples. But Jesus goes on in verse 20. "My prayer is not for them alone." He prays for us. "I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message." And isn't that terrific, even at this very difficult time in the life of Christ, as he moves inexorably towards the cross? He spares a thought for you and for me and for those who will follow the disciples. And then he says, "Father, I want those you have given me to be with me where I am, and to see my glory, the glory you have given me because you loved me before the creation of the world." Hope or disappointment? And that leads me to my last slide. I hope that you recognise these images. They are from our own church. And as difficult as the journey through Lent is, and as difficult as the journey through COVID and lockdown has been, always bear in mind, for every Good Friday there is an Easter Sunday. God bless you this Lent and Easter.